Ladies and gentlemen, University Reading List, Semester 7. I am almost finished and it's gone by quickly and quite uneventful. I'm very, very close to the end of my university experience, and it would be a sad thing to make a mess of it at this late stage in the game. So I'm going to tell you the books that I'm going to be reading. I'm going to try to restrain myself from making any particular comments about the texts, the course, and the professors, and the other students, because I don't want to get kicked out of university now after having spent so much money, having jumped through the goddamn hoops for the last couple of years. University Reading List. It's going to be a quick one because there's only 2 English literature classes this semester. So let's start with the classes that are not English literature. Environmental issues. It's a first-year class. I don't know where you live, but in Canada, if you are an arts student, you have to get some science credits. If you're a business student or a medical student or a biology student, you have to get some arts credits. It is so fucking stupid. I'm incensed about this because I know where it came from. Yeah, I used to be a waiter. It's like the Minister of Education went to have lunch with his secretary and they both had a little bit too much wine. And then after their meal and after more wine, they're just sitting there saying, how could we really make some good, well-rounded Canadian students? What if we make the art students study science? And what if we make the business students study arts so we get some really well-rounded Canadian students? Which is ridiculous because the students are already quite round with obesity. So this semester, I have to take my fucking science credit. I have to get it. There's no way of avoiding it. And I've got to take this environmental class. It's just such a joke. I mean, 70% of the students in the class, we went around and we introduced ourselves, 70% of them said, yeah, I'm here because I need the science credit. Nobody gives a shit. Oh well, but at least the teacher seems to care. It's a shame though. Imagine that, teaching a class like that where you just know the kids are there just because they need to fulfill this little thing on their certificate. It's such a shame. And I don't know what it's like in Australia or New Zealand or America, but it's just such a, happy little secretary idea. Really, whoever came up with that, implementing that for a university degree in Canada, I hope you drowned. All right, and I'm taking a creative writing class. I like creative writing classes because I should be writing much, much more often. I'm not writing very often because of you, dear viewer. I'm putting all of my time and energy into the YouTube channel right now, but in fact, I really should be devoted to the craft and the artistry of writing, which is really what I hope to do when I've done the other things that need doing. The only book we have to read in that class is this one, Resonance. This is a book where they have asked some local British Columbia writers to write an essay about writing. And if that sounds pretentious and self-serving, you are correct. If you are a writer and somebody asks you, please write an essay about writing, I think you should say no. Because how can you write something that is not going to be so obnoxious? Really. Let me read you a couple of the opening sentences. Now, 20-odd years ago, I learned from my son that his friend's brother had died by suicide. My son, friend's brother. That's not convoluted. At the victim's funeral. Are you a victim if it's suicide? No, you're not the victim. Victim is when something from the outside happens to you. Suicide is... At the victim's funeral, I wept and pictured his mother's face as the minister read her poem of lost hopes and dreams for her child, her longing to turn back the clock, to slay his demons. Fucking so cliched. Okay, I don't know where she's going, but it's pretentious. I have a fear of the blank page. I struggle to put words down. It's not writer's block. I identify too pathologically with the faction of writers who don't believe in it. Instead, what I fear is that flat, mocking expanse of white. I've got my head up my ass. Oh, look at all the room up here. The humble shoebox is an emblem of my childhood. I was never without one. Each served as a repository for a jumble of collected treasures, marbles swiped from the school playground. What, did she grow up in 1910? Chains of pressed daisies, I guess so. A perfect miniature rubber ball from a long-lost set of jacks. La-di-da. Yeah, I don't know if you can ever actually write something about the subject of writing with the hope of inspiring young writers without it really coming across as, you know, not wholly pretentious. Like it's there. It's innate. It's like asking an artist. Like imagine if you asked Lucian Freud, so when you go shopping for your paints, how do you choose the colors? You deserve a punch in the face for that question. Come on, man. So the teacher has an essay in this. I don't think it's because she's got a vested interest in selling copies. Like, you know, it's this massive collection of authors. It does seem a little bit self-serving, but it's her class. She teaches the course. The subject of the course is the business of writing, where this is the main thing. Like, I've got to remember that I'm at least twice as old as all of the other students. And yes, I've submitted hundreds of pieces of writing to dozens and dozens of magazines and journals. I've had a small amount of it published, but what has been published has really made me very happy. I really should not be too critical because, you know, like I'm miles and miles and miles ahead of them. Of course I am. Like I've lived twice as long as they have. Like I should be miles ahead of them because I'm so much older. So it's really a bit unfair of me to criticize them. It's just that it stinks. All right, let's get to the English literature classes. My third year English literature class is called Modernism, which is, I guess we can call it a literary movement, modernism. And it's actually one of my favorite periods for literature of all time. Sadly, quite a lot of the reading list for this semester, for this modernism class, is exactly the same as the reading list for a class that I had last semester, early 20th century British literature, because modernism took place in the early 20th century. So in this class, we will be reading The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot, which I love, but we read that 2 or 3 months ago for the other class. Like, I've just done that. We will be reading Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf, which I did 3 months ago in the other class. We will be reading James Joyce, Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, which is fine because I'm happy to read this one again. I think of all of James Joyce's, this is the one I like the most. But last semester, 3 months ago, we read Dubliners. The thing that, now we move to the last class. This is a fourth year English class, and it is a special class called Literature of the Anthropocene. Anthropocene is this era of man-made environmental catastrophe. What are we going to be reading? Margaret Atwood's Oryx and Crake. I don't like Margaret Atwood, but when I read Oryx and Crake, I thought it was pretty good science fiction. And it was a very long time ago. The only thing I remember from it was that these scientists had crossbred, like they had genetically mixed a pig with a wolf, vicious animal with a voracious appetite that escaped from the facility and just wreaked environmental havoc. Like it just ate everything, all the crops and all the other animals, which I thought was pretty good. We're reading this big fucking thing, Ducks, 2 Years in the Oil Sands by Kate Beaton. It's a graphic novel. It's a graphic novel, and it's not very well drawn, and it's not particularly interesting. From what I've read, this girl from Cape Breton, which is the very east coast of Canada, went to work in the oil sands in Alberta, which is the very middle of the country, because she needed the money. And that's a lot of Canadians need the money, and a lot of Canadians went out to the oil sands to work there. Again, I have to say, Grant You're twice as old as the students. They probably love having graphic novels on the syllabus. I don't think it's appropriate to have graphic novels in a fourth-year English literature class. We have 2, maybe even 3 graphic novel classes at the university. And I won't take them because I think they're a waste of time. I think spending $600 to spend 4 months reading a bunch of glorified comic books is a waste of time, and it's very childish. And I think the professors who teach the classes, all right, like maybe they get a little bit tired of teaching their stuffy little fiefdom of literature, whatever it is, and they want to take a little break and have fun and teach them graphic novels, but it's still very childish. It is still, like, it's like a punchline from a bad stand-up comedian from the early 90s. Like, yeah, hey, my cousin went to university and studying graphic novels. Yep, she's going to get a PhD in Batman. Yeah, she came over at Thanksgiving. God damn, you don't want to ask that chick about Lex Luthor. Huh, Jesus. Can you believe it, ladies and gentlemen? Comic books at university. That's what people are studying nowadays. Hey-oh. But it is a joke. It really is a joke. When you see, you know, these headlines, oh, they're offering a Harry Potter class. I don't know, what's more juvenile? You know, they're offering a university class in, I can't think of anything more juvenile than Harry Potter. We do have a guy at the university, a professor, who's like nutty about the Game of Thrones, and his classes I sedulously avoid because I'm a smart guy and I know words like sedulous. What else we got? We've got something called Nature Poem by Tommy Pico, which I've never heard of. And we've got this Jeff Vandermeer Annihilation, which I only know about because of the film. Some science fiction book. I don't know anything about it because I don't read science fiction. I've seen the movie, a little bit light and fluffy. I mean, there's really not too much to it, more than the special effects. Like, it doesn't really offer any huge commentary on anything. Like, it's basically a science fiction film that relies on the graphic quality, the cinematography, the special effects, which is bullshit. So we'll see. So I'm really struggling to keep my enthusiasm for studying English literature because aside from some of the classic classes I've taken, some of the Shakespeare, the old poetry classes, like the modern classes have been a big disappointment for me because let me tell you what I read in 1993 when I went to university the first time when I was 20. I took 20th century literature from a professor who was really big into postmodernism, which was something I had never even heard of. So we started off with Dubliners. That was number 1. Okay, and that was really quite dry and hard for me to read. Then we read To the Lighthouse, which I tried to read, but it was just too hard for me. I wasn't, you know, I couldn't do it, and it was too boring. But then we got into the wild stuff. We read Waiting for Godot. It was the first time I'd ever read that. We read The Homecoming by Harold Pinter, which blew my mind. Like, it was so shockingly indecent and novel. Like, I had never read it, and I became a devoted Harold Pinter fan. And then we read Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead by Tom Stoppard, another mind-blowing script. After that, we read Breakfast of Champions by Kurt Vonnegut, which made me a huge Kurt Vonnegut fan for like several years. And I read everything by Kurt Vonnegut because of that novel. But to this day, Breakfast of Champions I still think is the best. Like, it just kept getting stranger and stranger. Waiting for Godot. We read this Canadian novel, Coming Through Slaughter. I have it here because I've been meaning to reread it, Coming Through Slaughter. This is really wild and strange and good. And there was one more that it was at the end of the semester, so I didn't read it. I feel that professor 30 years ago in 1993 took more chances and opened more doors than the professors I've got now. This wasn't some special university either. This was Carleton in Ottawa, which is not very highly thought of. 30 years ago, I had professors who were showing me wild new authors. And now, okay, I'm 30 years older and I'm 30 years more well-read, so I need to take that into account. Should English literature students read Dalloway? But there are other things that, I mean, I feel that my professors are always making the safe, obvious choices. You know, like the obvious choices. Like, they never go for the wild, unknown stuff. maybe it's too hard. Like, for example, William Faulkner is in the modernist literature camp, but I just think he's too difficult for today's young students. They're not smart enough. They really aren't. And they're not well read enough. Like, they haven't read enough literature to even approach William Faulkner. Like, they just don't have the wherewithal. Yeah, so that's how I feel. The Anthropocene class, it's the first time he's teaching it, and like, I guess he's working it out. I'm just not happy to see a graphic novel on the in the course. Like, and even though there's not like a lot of words on the page, like, it's still 400 pages. It's 430 pages. Like, look, okay, there's, like, I mean, it's annoying because I have to just keep flipping the fucking pages because it's always the same thing. It's two heads every time. Like, it's not good. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. My name is Grant Shipway. I am a writer as well as a YouTube personality. If you would like to get a copy of my magazine, Grant Shipway, the friend from Budapest, the first 3 people who write to me at my email address, which is down below, and say, Grant, could you please send me a copy of your magazine for free? The first 3 people who write to me with your address, I will send you one for free. And if the video is a couple of days old, write to me anyway. If you want to buy one, $12. How do you send me the money? Well, you can put it into an envelope and send it that way, or you can do a money transfer to my bank account. Write me an email. We'll work it out, okay? All of these are signed and numbered and dated. That is number 87 from the 2nd of December. How many pages? 36 pages, not bad. 3 short stories, 1 poem. They've all been published, so that, I hope you understand, that means that there's quality here. Please subscribe and leave a like. I've been forgetting to say that. Subscribe and leave a like, please, please, please. My YouTube channel is a bit, in a bit of a rut. Take care.
Kissy, 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 kissy. Kissy, 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 kissy. Kissy, 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 kissy.
Yeah, that's Matthew.